Dear students, very good morning to all of you. Today, in the topic for the discussion, I have chosen women as the object of analysis. The crime against women, the women movements and organizations, the constitutional provisions in the protection and promotion of the welfare of the women, several acts enacted by the government of India in protecting the women from violence and other offences, and also various judgments delivered by the Supreme Court of India in uplifting and liberating the women who were otherwise oppressed, suppressed, and repressed. Let me first begin with achieve gender equality and empower all the women and girls. I repeat, achieve gender equality and empower all the women and girls. It is the goal 5th of Sustainable Development Goal of United Nations. So, let us look at what is the condition of women in India. Women in India are still lying at the marginalized sections of the society who are facing gender-based discriminations, violence, crime, and all forms of offenses instigated by the patriarchal domination of the Indian social order. Given the fact that Indian society, in the one hand, respects women as mother, sister, and others, on the other, it devalues the importance of women by treating them as property subjected to a continued oppression and subjection to a male domination. In the given scenario, one cannot forget the contributions made by the women to various fields today, even in the history of remote and even recent past, that for science and technology, for social making, politics, environment, and even for the broader economic prosperity, the contribution made by the women in India cannot be neglected at any cost. However, let us look at what is at present state of Indian society where women can positively be looked at. As you know, in Indus Valley, I just tell you the historical background. Indus Valley civilization valued women at par with men. Even in the Vedic age, the names of Lopamutra, Gargi, Maitreyi, right, all tell us how the women enjoyed very good status in the society by participating in the public discussions such as the Sabha and Samiti. However, since the later Vedic period and down to the centuries, the women had lost their higher status and came to be subjected to the patriarchal exploitation and domination. As you know, in the 5th century AD, during the age of the Guptas and even the greater medieval period, the women saw a greater expansion of subjugation of the women to the male domination. So, the practice of sati, polygamy, parda wearing, and restricting the movement of the women all became part and parcel of the early medieval and medieval period of India. As a result, in the 19th century, the reformers from revival and religious, that is, revivalist group and also the religious reformers began to address the issue of the women from the Western perspective as well as from the Indian Vedantic perspective. Thus, attempt to liberate the women from various angles. Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Keshav Chandra Sen, Swami Vivekanand and others whose contributions to the upliftment of the women cannot be simply ignored. However, a greater space for political participation came about for the women when the national movement began in the late 19th century, when it got intensified under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. The role of the women in the greater freedom struggle came to be witnessing a lot. Right? However, in the period after independence, in the post-independent era, several organizations began to crop up. But you must remember, in Indian society, let me put a topic here. What is the role of women in Indian society? The women play a vital role in the family, in the nurturing of the children, in educating the children, looking after the health of the family members, and also assuring the food security of the family. Right? So, as very important member of the family, protecting other members of the family, maintaining the decorum in order in the family, the women play a vital role. Similarly, education, if the woman gets educated, it means that she's going to educate the entire family and the nation. At the same time, the one who gets a good health care, even the woman who looks after the family by nurturing the children and the spouse and other members of the family, look after the family well. So the health professionals are also women. If they were women, there will be for sure that the entire nation gets benefited. Right? Food producers, farmers, entrepreneurs, and gatekeepers, in such roles, the women play a vital role in ensuring the food security of the country and also the family. Similarly, accessibility, availability, stability, and utility of the food production and food security could be made by the participation of women in such scenario. Coming to what is the role of women in the Indian politics? Politics in India is often regarded as a male affair, which has now been contested by the larger presence of the Indian women. A data tells us in the Year 1962, the participation of women in electorate, that is the percentage of the women voted in the election of 1962 was 46.6%. It increased to 66.9% in 2019, the recent election held for the Lok Sabha. Similarly, the female representatives MPs in the Lok Sabha in 1951 was 5%, and now it increased in the in 2019 election. The percentage of the female MPs in the Lok Sabha increased to 14%. So these are all the positive signs. However, a long way to go. But one thing we must admit, that after the introduction of 73rd and 74th Amendment that brought about the Panchayati Raj and municipal institutions, where the states had given the most importance to the women representation. Now, more than 50% of the women are the representatives in these institutions. Now, let us look at what is the role of women in Indian economy. As you know, 18% of the GDP is contributed by the women. However, 48% of agriculture is looked after by the women in India, yet they owned 13% of the land. Similarly, the women in India, the workforce in industries constitute only 20%, whereas in the service sector, their participation contributes 30%. Right? In the startup in India, there is an ecosystem for startup in India where the women participation, the women contribution and participation is only 10%. But there is a rapid jump in the higher echelons of the offices where the women become chief executive officers. Like 55% increase was there in the Indian economy. Now, coming to what is the role of Indian women in the environmental conservation. As you know, women was the water collector, fuel collector, they are the food producers, farmers, and they are greatly connected to the environment, and therefore they are much concerned about the protection and conservation of the Indian environment, nature, and ecological diversity of the country. As you know, in the 1970s Chipko movement, Apiko movement, Bishnoi movement, Silent Valley movement, and Narmada Bachao Andolan all were led by the women in large scale. So, women's participation in environmental conservation is inevitable. It is becoming inevitable factor as you look at. Then coming to now crime against women. So now you know crime against women. It is said that for every 20 minutes, a woman is raped. For every 25 minutes, a woman is molested. For every 40 minutes, a woman is kidnapped. For every 4 days, a woman is murdered. This is the tendency in India. This is the trend going on in India. Now, crime is not well defined in the Indian Penal Code of 1860, now changed into 2023. But crime is substituted by the term offense as defined in the section 40 of Indian Penal Code. It defines that an offense takes place by the act of commission or by the act of omission. So any act of omission or commission through which an offense takes place which concerns the women alone, it is called a crime against women. So crime against women happens in several instances, right? The violence against women can be understood in 6 contexts how it happens. And the violence against women, first, the violence against women which is money oriented, for the purpose of money they commit crime against women. 2, the violence against women is power oriented over the weak. 3, the violence against women which aims at pleasure seeking. Number 4, the crime against the violence against women which is the resultant of the perpetrator pathology, right? 5, the crime or violence against the women is resulting from the stressful environment. And 6, the violence against women which is situation precipitated or the victim precipitated. So now what I just tell you, when an offense takes place, a crime takes place, there are 2 parties involved. 1, the offender, the 2, victim. Offender may be also called perpetrator and victim may be called the victimized. So the point is that the crime against women can be clubbed under 2 categories. We can club the crime against women under 2 categories for our convenience. 1, the crimes enumerated and enlisted under Indian Penal Code, and crime against women under local laws and special laws. I would suggest that the crime against women under the Penal Code can be grouped into, can be understood in seven categories. 1, rape. 2, kidnap and murder. C, kidnap and abduction. C, murder for dowry. 4, murder for dowry. And, I repeat, first rape, second kidnap and abduction, third murder for dowry, fourth torture, mental and physical, fifth molestation, sixth eve teasing, and seventh, importation of the girls under 21 years, up to 21 years. So, then under local laws and special laws, there are 4, crime against the women. The practice of sati, 1. 2, dowry death. 3, immoral trafficking. And 4, the indecent representation of women. What I just want to suggest to you See, rape, as you know, defined in the section 375 and 376 of Indian Penal Code. Kidnap and abduction. What is the difference between? Kidnap is the process by which a minor, if in case of women, girl under 18 years old, taken away from the lawful guardian, or enticed and taken away from the lawful guardian. If it is the male, then under 16 years age. So if anybody, if a female under 18 years age or the male under 16 years age is enticed or taken away from the lawful guardian, is called kidnap. Whereas abduction means taking away a person forcibly, fraudulently, and deceitfully against her or his will is called abduction. Abduction means forcibly, deceitfully, fraudulently taking away a person against her will, against her or his will. Mostly, it is the women-specific offense. Now, I just want to tell you a few things. You just remember it. Abduction may be, willing abduction, forcible abduction, accessory abduction, and also stressful abduction. Why the girls used to be abducted? Why the girls were being abducted? Right? Abduction is basically happening because in order to have illicit marriage or sex. So, I tell you, wife battering, acid attack victims, acid attack, honor killing, and many other forms of violences are committed against women. So the point is that why such offenses or crimes are happening against women? In what motivates them? Right? So victims provocation is the first reason why the crimes against women take place. Right? Victims are the first reason why there is an offense taking place. Right? Second, intoxication of the male counterpart. So they are drunken, they might be indulging in offense against women, crime against women. Third, hostility towards women. The men might have the tendency of looking the women counterpart as hostile all the times. Fourth, there might be a situational urge on the part of the offender. The situation precipitates an offense to take place. It is not premeditated. So therefore, my dear friends, students, and dear brothers and sisters, you must remember one thing. If a married woman battered by the husband, in-laws, and other relatives, it is resulting from victim's precipitation or provocation, victim's behavior, victim's, omission or commission of certain acts which are contrary to the will of the spouse. Right? Now, let us look at, the women organizations in India which raised a voice for the protection and promotion of the women rights in India. Right? What I wanted to talk to you is the women movements in India, that is women organizations in India, how it had evolved over a period of time. Dear friends, here you must remember, as the socio-religious reform movements of the 19th and 20th century made a greater contribution to the upliftment and empowerment of the women, and also the freedom struggle had created a space for women's voice and their participation. Now you must remember, before 1947, that is before independence, right? National Council for Women in India, National Council for Women in India, founded in the year 1925. All India Women's Conference, founded in the year 1926 by Margaret's cousins, right? Deshika Seva Sangh, Desh Sevika Sangh, founded in the year 1930 in different parts of the country, had played a prominent role in addressing the problems of the women and also engaging themselves in promoting the boycott of the foreign clothes and also promoting the Swadeshi. After 1947, after independence, the movement of the women, the women's movements, had taken a radical turn where you could see the leftist movements, Tebaga movement in Bengal, Telangana movement in erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, and also the Naxalite movement of Bengal and Bihar have largely incorporated the women's participation and their leadership. However, in the 1970s, with the foundation of SEWA, Self-Employed Workers Association, Self-Employed Women's Association, founded in the year 1972 by Ella Bhatt, had actually brought about a radical shift in the focus of the women. At present, in SEWA, 2.1 million self-employed women are enrolled. It is a larger trade union working in India, right? So, Snehalaya, founded in the year 1989, which is functioning at Ahmedabad, which is focusing on the upliftment of the women, children, and the LGBT community, has been playing a very important role in, addressing the issues of the women. Northeastern Network, founded in the year 1995 as part of the Beijing Conference on Women, have brought about larger reformative steps where they had, the members of this association had raised the gender-based rights for the women. The Mahila Kisan Adhikar Mocha, that is Makam, has also been working on the welfare and the upliftment of the women. Similarly, Mahila Congress, All India Democratic Women's Association are all associated with the political parties of this country, where the women gets the leadership and talks about their problems. Similarly, in Mumbai, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Delhi, you have several organizations such as Saheli, Asmita, Forum Against the Oppression of, Women. All these associations, movements are working for the welfare of the women. So you must remember all these things for the betterment of the women. You must note down these points and talk about all these issues. Then coming to the constitutional provisions and the laws and regulations, judgments addressing the empowerment of the women, gender equality, genuine democracy, and equality between men and women in all spheres of life. So, I just tell you, my dear friends, I'm going to present 3 subtopics. 1. Constitutional provisions addressing the women's empowerment. 2. The laws enacted so far to empower the women. And 3. The judgments delivered for the promotion and empowerment of the women. So first, let me take up the constitutional provisions. You must remember Article 14. Article 14 ensures equality before law and equal protection of law, which includes both men and women. Article 15:1 talks about the prohibition of discrimination on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, and place of birth. Article 15:3 gives the space for the government to bring about affirmative action in the protection of women. Article 16 provides an equal opportunity in the public employment for men and women. Article 23 gives a space for eradication of the forced labor and trafficking. Article 39A talks about men and women acquiring a right livelihood, a means of right livelihood. Article 39D talks about equal pay for equal remuneration. Article 42 talks about the just and humane condition in the workplace and also maternity benefit. Article 51A, that is the duty, fundamental duty, talks about renouncing the derogatory misrepresentation of the women. Article 300A talks about the women's entitlement to the property, the right to property for the women. Now, these are the articles which talk about the women's empowerment, and now I would take you to some of the important laws that are addressing the issues of the women and their protection. 1. Dowry Prohibition Act 1961, which prohibits dowry in all its forms. Equal Remuneration Act 1976 for both men and women, right? Indecent Representation Prevention and Prohibition Act 1986, right, which prohibits the misrepresentation and indecent representation of women, right? Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005, right? And Sexual Harassment of the Women at Workplaces, She Act 2013, and many more acts have been enacted by the Government of India, and several local acts enacted by the respective legislative assemblies aimed at protecting and promoting the welfare of the women. Right? Let me come to the last part, that is the judgments of the Supreme Court for the protection and promotion of the women and their welfare. Now, you must remember one thing. That is, in the year 1997, Vishaka Guideline spoke about the women working at the workplace with dignity and dignified and decent work conditions. It issued, Supreme Court of India issued the guidelines in favor of the women. Right? Shaira Banu judgment in 2017, where the Supreme Court struck down the triple talaq practice as it is against the gender equality and gender justice. In 2018, in the Sabrimala case, the Supreme Court had, permitted the women of the menstrual age to go into the sanctum and the sanctorum of the temple, as it were prohibited earlier by the tradition. In the year 2018, Joseph Shine versus Union of India, where adultery was struck down as it was elaborated and explained by the Supreme Court of India against the gender justice and gender equality. Adultery is no longer a crime in India. Right? So, my dear friends, brothers and sisters, you please listen to this lecture, and you can also have a time to interact with me. Either you can contact me 9818157350, or you can post a comment in the comment box so that I can reply you well on time. Thank you.